Hey, thank you very much for hitting the recording button. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Policy Committee meeting of November 9th, 2021. All members of the committee are present, but I'd like to call this meeting to order and give the public an opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the committee's scope, including items on or not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
I did not have anybody contact me in advance, but Art, if you could please unmute everybody so they have the opportunity to do so.
It's just my doppelganger Metro Cable, so no.
It looks like there's nobody else on the call.
Thank you, Madam. It's just a shocker that we don't have people lined up for this. Just a real shocker. Let's move on now to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman,
consent.
I so move.
Thank you, sir. Need a second? Walt seconds. I could tell he wanted to second. I saw that. I could tell that. I felt it even remotely. Madam Clerk, if you'd please call the roll.
Director Gould,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
and Clark.
Aye.
Passes.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to our presentation items. Matt Roseberry from who is the director of the IT division. He has two policies that he'd like to present to us. So Matt, take it away.
All right, good evening, directors, chief arms. Okay, first policy is our new data security policy. Due to all of the recent and ongoing cyber threats out there, we wanted to make sure we identified a way to keep our data secure. The policy in brief basically outlines the different types of our confidential and sensitive data and what we do in order to protect the data, and then what do we do when we get rid of our data and transport our data. So as an example, whenever we get rid of a new server or a copy machine, we take the hard drives out and we shred them. Or if we have a device we're going to use again, we'll run what's called a DoD wipe, and that eliminates any and all data on those devices before we e-waste them and or use them again. That's basically the entire policy in brief. Any questions?
Any questions from members of the committee related to the first item? These are both presentation items tonight only, gentlemen. So any questions, any changes, additions, suggestions? I'll entertain those now.
Right. I do have a question, and it's basically, have we had any sort of threats lately or anything that credible threats or anything that we've experienced in the last, say, couple of years?
Matt?
Yes, we have. Not as of, I'd say it's been probably 3 or more years. We were hit with ransomware 3 times.
Okay.
They were all 0-day attacks, and we had 0 data loss.
Very good. Yeah, I was a little concerned about that, but yeah, okay.
Guidance we have in place, we do protect our data. But again, I have to stress they are 0-day attacks, meaning that our firewalls and our antivirus did not have the signatures yet. And very happy to come out, we present those, and then we take care of the issue.
And another question, did we ever, I mean, I don't know if this is classified or what, but did we find out who the perpetrators were, and were they prosecuted or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No.
No to both?
No to both, yeah.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
All right.
Welcome. Walt, any questions or comments about this particular policy?
Nope.
Okay, very good. And gentlemen, I've already had a conversation with Matt relative to this, but I want to go on the record relative to a couple of suggestions that I've made. And this comment will apply to both of these presentation items this evening. As I read through them, one of the things that struck out as an item that I think Matt will work on when these policies come back to us. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure of is, as we develop these security policies, one of the things I want to give the IT department an opportunity to do is test these policies in the world that they test them from a cybersecurity standpoint. So I've asked Matt to consider to add language in both of these policies that it would allow his department to pierce the data from a cybersecurity standpoint to test our system. So that if we have a policy on data security, test that security in whatever way is appropriate from a cybersecurity. In addition to the passwords, have an ability by policy to test password security, and that it protect the department against someone who feels like the department doesn't have the right to test those passwords to ensure that they're secured and can't be breached, and on and on and on. And so I've asked Matt and his team to come up with some language that can be added to both of these policies that protects the department when they test these different policies as it comes to data. And it gets right back to Delma, what you were asking about, attacks. How we prevent those attacks is be, forward thinking and come up with some of our own testing so that we're ahead of the power curve should that ever happen in the future. So I just wanted to make my colleagues aware of that suggestion to Matt. We were off record before we started the meeting, so now it's on the record, but that's my suggestion to both of these policy presentations this evening. Matt, do you want to add anything to that topic? Because I know we kind of run short as we got ready for the full meeting.
No, I appreciate the comments, and I will definitely add those in. So like you mentioned, it will give us that protection when we do run the test against the data. I appreciate that. So we'll get them added in there and then send them back out.
Okay, Walt, any issues with that?
Nope.
Delman?
I have none. I think that's a great suggestion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the second presentation then, Matt, if you would.
Okay, next one is our password policy. Basically, what we're doing in here is giving the examples of how to have your passwords, where to store your passwords, how long we're going to make, how long you should use your same password before you require you to change it. And it addresses the user passwords, internal IT passwords, for different types of user accounts, etc. It also identifies mobile passwords and what to do with that, and kind of the new standards of creating complex passwords and suggestions on how to do that. And that is that in a nutshell.
Matt, what's the duration, that the recommendation, how long to keep?
1 year. Yeah, it's 1 year before you have to change your password.
That works for me.
Yes.
I work in a county where it's like, seems like it's every 7 days they want to change.
Yes, so the latest and greatest from Microsoft is 1 year. That's just to in case you're part of any type of breaches that exist out there, so you can make sure you do change your password. But every 90 days, when you make it too complex and too often, most people will just take their password and add a number to the end of it, and so it doesn't really do anything for you.
I thought I originated.
Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just think it's pretty clever. I hadn't been using this method myself about a phrase, and that makes a lot of sense. It really does. I think that's pretty good.
Excellent.
Thank you, Delman. Walt, any other questions?
Nope.
Matt, I have one for you.
Yes.
Let's play this scenario out that I choose not to be compliant with the password policy. What happens?
Well, it depends on the system. In our Active Directory and a lot of the other systems, we can actually set it where you have to meet a specific guideline. So you have to have a 12 character password, alphanumeric, and other ones may not allow you to have 12. So it's going to be at the discretion of the application. So we can set those password requirements in the application itself to make sure that you will comply.
So I think in the language of this particular policy, there needs to be direct information of a failure to comply with the password policy means that you will be locked out of whatever database you're attempting to access until you become compliant.
Okay, I can add.
Only because I'm afraid that people could say, well, that's too hard for me. Anyway, they could choose to not be compliant, but still want access to whatever level of data they have access to. And in here, it would just simply say a failure to be compliant with the policy means you will have zero access to the data. right? Because then you can't control it from a security standpoint, right?
Correct.
So I just think as I read through this, I'm like, so what? I don't, I choose not to do that. It's too damn hard to remember 12 things, whatever the case may be. And that's fine. That's okay. That's your right to not have to do it. But when you don't comply with the policy, then you don't get access to the data. It puts power back in the security side of the house.
Yes.
Could you add that language?
Yes, I can.
Do my colleagues have any problems with that particular additional language?
I have none.
Okay.
Walt?
None for me.
Okay. So Matt, I'm sorry that this is going to have to come back again as a presentation item, but hopefully, we can get it out of presentation and into action the next time the board policy committee meets. Is that all right with you?
That's fine.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen, relative to these two policy considerations under presentation items tonight?
I'm happy with the presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Matt, is there anything else you'd like to add for the committee?
No.
Okay. Is there somebody wait? Oh, no, they weren't. They were just combing their hair. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that then brings this particular meeting to a close. Our next meeting is to be determined. Matt and his department or division take care of some of these additions. I'm sure we'll see these back as action items in the future. If there are no additional questions, we'll adjourn this committee meeting. Thank you. We'll see you in 20 minutes.
All right.
Or